Picture a young girl standing silently before a cracked wall, her tiny hand pressed softly against it, feeling a gentle heartbeat trapped within, a desperate soul reaching out through silence. Could you trust your heart enough to break down walls and uncover truths hidden in darkness? If this tender moment of bravery speaks to you, please take a quiet second to subscribe, like, and share, joining us to uncover more extraordinary stories of hope and courage. Emma Coleman woke with a start, her small body trembling gently beneath her favorite bluebonnet-patterned quilt. The Texas moon, bright and clear, cast a silvery glow across her bedroom, touching softly on the old oak dresser and the boxes still unpacked after their recent move to Fredericksburg. Emma was only 6, a delicate girl with chestnut curls tumbling freely down her shoulders and soft hazel eyes always filled with quiet curiosity. Tonight, those eyes were wide open, her breath shallow, heart quickening, as the faintest whispering whine seeped through the walls. She sat upright slowly, holding her breath, ears straining. There it was again, a pitiful, distant sound, mournful, barely audible, yet unmistakably real. Emma knew animals, sensed their emotions deeper than most adults ever could. This sound wasn't a trick of imagination, it was fear and loneliness, woven into a helpless cry. Sliding off the bed, Emma padded silently across the wooden floorboards, pressing her tiny hand against the floral wallpapered wall. She leaned in, her cheek cool against its surface, eyes closing tight to sharpen her focus. Her heart raced as another weak whimper vibrated gently through her fingertips. Tears sprang to her eyes, not from fright, but a sudden, overwhelming sadness at the anguish hidden behind those walls. Drawing courage from deep within, Emma softly called out in her gentle voice, speaking with a tenderness usually reserved for her favorite plush rabbit. She whispered softly that it would be all right, that someone was here, someone cared. Immediately, the whining stopped, replaced by a faint scratching, almost as if in answer. Emma's small shoulders relaxed slightly, a feeling of comfort spreading through her chest as she realized she'd been heard. Unable to wait until morning, Emma tiptoed out of her room and down the short hallway toward her parents' bedroom. She gently nudged open the partially ajar door and stepped inside. Her mother, Grace Coleman, stirred first, sitting up in concern as she saw Emma standing in her pale nightgown illuminated by moonlight. Grace was a slender woman in her early 30s, with long auburn hair and a soothing presence that always made Emma feel safe. Next to her, Emma's father, Jack Coleman, a tall, strong-built man with sandy blonde hair, was beginning to stir awake, blinking sleepily. Emma quietly described the pitiful sound behind her wall, the frightened animal she was sure was trapped. Grace exchanged a quick, skeptical glance with Jack, their tired expressions betraying gentle disbelief. They reassured Emma softly, explaining it was probably the old house settling or the rustling of trees outside the window. But Emma shook her head emphatically, insisting that the sound was real and pleading with a sincerity only a child possesses. After a few moments, Jack stood, gently lifting Emma into his strong arms. Together they returned to her room. Emma watched nervously as her father placed his ear against the wall, his brow furrowing as he listened intently. Minutes passed silently, Emma holding her breath as hope flickered briefly in her heart. But when Jack turned around, his expression was sympathetic, yet unconvinced. He carefully explained that he had heard nothing, perhaps it was a dream, or just imagination fueled by the unfamiliar shadows of the new house. Emma's tiny shoulders slumped slightly, tears shimmering in her eyes. Jack softly placed her back into bed, tucking the quilt around her warmly. He kissed her forehead reassuringly, telling her everything would seem clearer in the morning. As her father quietly left the room, Emma lay awake, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The distant cries did not return right away, but Emma's heart was certain they would. She knew, without doubt, that someone was waiting for her help behind that wall. Hours passed, the quiet punctuated only by the ticking of the old hallway clock. Emma, still awake, was beginning to doubt her own senses when once again the weak, heartbreaking whimper seeped through the wall. Her heart surged with determination. She pressed her hand firmly against the wallpaper, whispering gentle promises of rescue and safety, comforting both the unseen prisoner and her own tender heart. This time, the faint scratching came immediately, stronger, as if drawing strength from Emma's unwavering belief. As dawn began to break, filling the Texas sky with shades of gentle pink and soft gold, Emma drifted finally into sleep, hand still pressed softly against the wall. Her dreams were filled with images of frightened animals and endless dark corridors, yet she felt strangely calm. She had made a silent vow. She would not rest until whatever creature waited behind those walls was free, safe, and loved once again. Days passed, yet the desperate sound behind Emma's bedroom wall did not fade. Instead, it grew clearer, more urgent, as if the creature hidden inside knew someone was finally listening. Emma, small and steadfast with soft curls always carefully tucked behind her ears, would sit cross-legged on the floor, her slender hand pressed gently against the cool wallpaper, softly murmuring words of comfort. Each whisper seemed to strengthen the invisible bond forming between her and the creature whose sorrowful voice haunted her nights. Grace Coleman watched her daughter from the doorway, worry furrowing her delicate brow. Grace, slender and calm with a nurturing spirit, had always admired Emma's sensitivity, though lately it had taken an unsettling turn. Jack, too, had begun noticing the changes. His normally cheerful daughter had grown quiet, withdrawn, her young face pale beneath the bright Texas sun, eyes heavy from nights spent awake, listening. Concerned, Grace decided to approach Emma during one of her quiet conversations with the unseen companion. Kneeling softly beside her daughter, Grace gently laid a comforting hand on Emma's small shoulder. Her voice was careful and warm as she asked Emma about what she heard, wanting to understand rather than dismiss her daughter's fears. Emma turned to her mother, eyes earnest, filled with an innocent sincerity that was impossible to doubt. Emma explained quietly yet firmly that she could sense the animal's pain clearly, describing a deep loneliness that resonated profoundly within her own young heart. As Grace listened, she felt a pang of sadness tighten her chest, moved by the depth of her daughter's empathy. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden shadows across their peaceful Fredericksburg home, Grace shared her concerns with Jack, who now took them more seriously. Sitting together on the worn porch steps beneath the fading daylight, they agreed to quietly research the history of their new home, hoping to dispel Emma's distressing beliefs with facts, or perhaps uncover a forgotten secret. The next morning, Jack drove into town, parking his old Ford pickup outside the town's historical society. Inside, an elderly volunteer named Marjorie Lewis greeted him warmly, her silver hair pinned neatly back, glasses perched thoughtfully on her gentle face. Jack asked cautiously about the previous occupants of their home, explaining that his daughter was experiencing unusual disturbances. Marjorie's expression grew solemn as she carefully searched through archived records. After some moments, Marjorie's hands paused on a yellowed newspaper article. Her face softened in quiet sympathy as she recounted the story of Harold Mitchell, a former owner who had occupied the house several years ago. Harold, she explained in a compassionate tone, had been well known in town for his reclusive nature and increasingly erratic behavior. He was eventually institutionalized after neighbors reported hearing strange noises and disturbing episodes late at night. Jack listened intently, feeling his heart beat faster with every revelation. When Marjorie quietly mentioned the disappearance of Harold's dog, a German shepherd named Ranger, Jack's breath caught sharply in his throat. She gently showed him a photograph, faded but clear enough to make out a beautiful young German shepherd with alert, trusting eyes and a shining black and tan coat. A dog, Marjorie sighed, that Harold had deeply loved before illness clouded his mind. Ranger had vanished without trace around the time Harold was taken away, leaving behind only mystery and unanswered questions. Jack thanked Marjorie, his voice tight with suppressed emotion as he stepped out onto the warm, sunlit sidewalk. On his drive home, the weight of realization pressed heavily on him. Emma's persistent belief now seemed far less imaginary, colored by the heartbreaking reality of what had occurred beneath their very roof. Upon arriving home, Jack shared the discoveries with Grace, whose gentle eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. Together, they approached Emma, finding her again beside the wall, quietly speaking soothing words. Emma turned to her parents, her face hopeful yet cautious, sensing their shift in belief. Jack knelt beside his daughter, gently taking her small hand in his own, and explained what he had uncovered about Harold Mitchell and Ranger. Emma's eyes shone brightly with tears, not of sadness, but relief. Someone finally understood. As the family sat together quietly, the faint sound behind the wall seemed to resonate softly through the room. It was more than a cry. It was a plea, echoing gently through layers of forgotten history, waiting patiently, desperately, for rescue. Emma tightened her grip on her father's hand, her gaze steady and determined. They all knew that something needed to be done soon. Behind the quiet sadness that had wrapped their lives, a sense of purpose and urgency emerged, uniting their hearts in a shared promise to save Ranger, and perhaps to heal the past that had shadowed their home for far too long. Jack Coleman stood silently before the wall in Emma's bedroom, a heavy hammer gripped tightly in his strong, calloused hand. His normally steady blue eyes were now clouded with concern and urgency, knowing he held within his grasp the chance to right a long-standing wrong. Grace stood quietly beside Emma, gently squeezing her daughter's small shoulders, offering silent strength. Emma's breath was shallow, her small body tense with anticipation, heart beating rapidly as the hammer struck the wall, breaking open the silence of the room. Piece by piece, the drywall crumbled away, revealing darkness beyond. Jack paused briefly, taking a deep breath, as Grace handed him a flashlight. As the beam pierced the dusty gloom, they saw movement in the shadows. The silence stretched for only a moment before it was broken by Emma's soft cry, filled with relief and sorrow. Inside, cowering weakly, lay a German shepherd, thin, trembling, his once beautiful black and tan coat, now dull, patchy, and matted. His ribs protruded sharply, each bone visible beneath the stretched skin, his brown eyes wide with confusion and fear. Emma stepped forward cautiously, whispering gentle reassurances, her voice breaking with tears, though steady with compassion. At the sound of her voice, the dog lifted his weary head slowly, his eyes finding Emma's own with a remarkable sense of recognition and trust. Grace brought a blanket, her hands trembling slightly as she carefully passed it to Jack. Together they gently lifted the dog out of the darkness, wrapping him warmly, whispering softly as they placed him down onto Emma's bedroom floor. Jack knelt beside the fragile creature, examining him with gentle care. Grace, moved deeply by the heartbreaking sight, began calling veterinarians nearby, urgency trembling in her voice. Emma stayed beside the German shepherd, softly stroking his fur, carefully avoiding his injuries. As her small hand caressed his head, his eyes slowly relaxed, melting into trustful gratitude. Emma smiled through her tears and softly named him Ranger, after the brave, noble spirit he had shown during his unimaginable ordeal. Within hours, the family had brought Ranger to Dr. Evelyn Harper, a kind and respected local veterinarian in her 50s, known throughout Fredericksburg for her deep compassion toward animals. Her silver-streaked auburn hair was pulled neatly back, framing a calm face lined gently by years spent caring for creatures in need. Dr. Harper's face was solemn as she examined Ranger, but a spark of hope remained strong in her gentle brown eyes. Dr. Harper explained softly to Emma and her parents that Ranger's condition was critical, but not hopeless. Malnutrition and dehydration had weakened him greatly, but his vital signs indicated a stubborn will to survive. Emma stood by Ranger's side, quietly reassuring him throughout the examination, her presence seemingly giving Ranger the strength to endure. Back at home, Emma spent every possible moment with Ranger, caring for him tirelessly. She carefully fed him nourishing meals, recommended by Dr. Harper, gently bathed him, and brushed his recovering coat until its original softness and sheen gradually returned. As days turned into weeks, the thinness faded from Ranger's frame, replaced by healthy weight and muscle. The once fearful, timid dog slowly began to hold his head high, each movement infused with renewed dignity. Most remarkable of all was Ranger's bond with Emma, which blossomed each day into something extraordinary. Ranger's eyes would follow Emma lovingly, watching her every move, responding instantly to her gentle voice. Emma shared quiet conversations with Ranger, understanding his needs before anyone else could see them. His eyes, previously clouded by pain, now shone brightly each time Emma entered the room, his tail gently wagging, filled with genuine happiness. Jack and Grace watched this transformation with awe and gratitude, moved profoundly by Emma's patient dedication and Ranger's inspiring resilience. Friends and neighbors began visiting, marveling at the remarkable recovery, bringing small gifts and words of support. The story of Ranger's survival quietly spread, touching the hearts of many in Fredericksburg, a gentle reminder of the healing power found within love and compassion. As Ranger grew stronger, Emma began taking him for short walks around their peaceful neighborhood, each step they took together symbolic of Ranger's journey back to life. Emma's small, gentle hand lightly gripped Ranger's leash, her heart swelling with pride at his growing strength, courage, and trust. And in those peaceful moments, beneath the soft, comforting Texas sky, Emma understood clearly that Ranger had not only found new life through her care, but had also deeply transformed her own young heart. Through the miracle of healing, they had saved each other, forever linked by a bond of empathy, trust, and the quiet strength of unconditional love. With each passing day, Ranger's strength blossomed, his muscles firm and coat now glossy beneath Fredericksburg's warm sun. But as his physical health improved, a new restlessness shadowed the noble German shepherd, causing his eyes to frequently drift toward the outskirts of town, where Lake Buchanan lay quiet and still beneath vast Texas skies. Emma noticed this shift immediately. Her empathetic heart felt Ranger's unease like a silent whisper through her veins, making her pause, often in gentle concern. It wasn't fear or pain she sensed in him now, but something deeper, a purpose, an urgent need that seemed to pull at Ranger's very soul. One late afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered softly through rustling oak branches, Emma stood on their porch, watching Ranger intently gaze into the distant horizon. His eyes, intelligent and filled with quiet intensity, beckoned her. Emma felt a clear yet unspoken request that stirred her deeply, compelling her to trust him without question. Quietly, Emma reached for his leash, fastening it gently. Together, guided by Ranger's purposeful stride, they walked along familiar roads that gradually led them away from town, toward the tranquil yet lonely shores of Lake Buchanan. As they drew closer to the lake, Ranger quickened his pace, his ears alert, eyes determined. Emma's heartbeat quickened in anticipation as they approached an abandoned, weather-beaten house hidden partially behind overgrown bushes and shadowed trees. Its weathered walls were chipped, windows boarded, and a sense of sorrow hung heavily around it. Ranger halted sharply, emitting a low, anxious whine that sent chills through Emma's small body. Quietly, she knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand upon his fur. Emma's gaze followed his, and as she listened closely, faint whimpers and distressed barking echoed softly from within the crumbling structure. Emma's heart broke instantly, memories of Ranger's own suffering flooding her mind, propelling her courageously forward despite her fear. She crept closer, Ranger protectively by her side, his steps careful yet firm, senses sharp. Through a crack in one boarded window, Emma peered inside, holding her breath. Her young heart shuddered at the distressing sight. Several dogs, various breeds and sizes, appeared frightened, chained, and neglected. Their dull eyes mirrored Ranger's previous desperation, their silent cries piercing Emma's gentle soul. But most devastating was the small figure hunched quietly in the corner, a young boy, perhaps 9 years old, with sandy hair, thin frame, and frightened green eyes. Emma's throat tightened painfully when she saw the marks of exhaustion and sorrow clearly etched on his pale face. A harsh voice suddenly shattered the silence, causing both Emma and Ranger to shrink back into the shadows. A tall, stern-looking man with graying hair, dressed roughly in worn clothing, approached the boy, barking orders in a voice lacking kindness or warmth. Emma's heart sank further as she realized with anguish that this man was the boy's own father, his stern presence filling the room with tension and fear. Quietly retreating, Emma guided Ranger away from immediate danger, her heart pounding heavily in sorrow and urgency. Hidden behind the dense foliage, she knelt beside Ranger, wrapping her trembling arms around him. Her gentle voice soothed the dog's own trembling frame as she reassured him, promising silently that they would return and free the suffering souls inside. Ranger's dark, intelligent eyes met Emma's, understanding fully the solemn vow held within her gaze. He pressed himself closer to her, offering strength, unity, and comfort in a silent exchange of trust and determination. As the sun began to set, casting warm hues across Lake Buchanan, Emma returned home swiftly, her mind already forming a plan. Jack and Grace, sensing Emma's urgency, listened gravely as she recounted the heartbreaking discovery. Both parents were deeply moved, promising immediate help, pride swelling in their chests at their daughter's unwavering bravery and compassion. With decisive swiftness, Jack contacted the local authorities, his voice strong yet trembling slightly as he described the disturbing scene. The Fredericksburg police, recognizing the severity of the situation, promised swift and compassionate action. Emma felt a small measure of relief, knowing help would soon arrive. That night, beneath the comforting glow of stars, Emma sat quietly beside Ranger, her arms gently encircling him. Together, they silently awaited the dawn, and the rescue they knew must come, bonded deeply by shared courage, compassion, and the gentle strength of hope that only hearts filled with pure love could truly understand. As dawn broke over Fredericksburg, a sense of quiet urgency filled the Coleman home. Emma, small but resolute, stood beside Ranger, gently brushing her fingertips through his soft black and tan fur, drawing strength from his steadfast presence. Outside, police vehicles quietly assembled, their lights muted yet purposeful beneath the pale morning sky. Officer Matthew Sullivan, a compassionate young policeman known locally for his calm demeanor, approached Emma's family with reassuring confidence, his clear gray eyes filled with quiet determination. Together, led by Ranger's unwavering guidance, they quickly returned to the abandoned house near Lake Buchanan. Emma's heart quickened as they neared the sorrowful place again, but her resolve never wavered. Beside her, Ranger's stride was confident, eyes alert, a guardian determined to see justice prevail. The police moved swiftly, quietly surrounding the property, entering carefully yet decisively. Moments later, anxious barks and frightened whimpers gave way to hopeful yelps of relief as officers gently freed each dog. Among them was a tiny, trembling Labrador puppy, perhaps only weeks old, its golden fur matted and dull, large brown eyes wide with fear and confusion. Emma's gaze soon fell upon Noah, the young boy she'd glimpsed earlier. Officer Sullivan gently escorted him from the house, guiding him carefully toward the waiting ambulance, his small body visibly trembling beneath worn clothes. Noah's eyes, frightened yet hopeful, searched the crowd anxiously until meeting Emma's calm, compassionate gaze. Something unspoken yet powerful passed between them, recognition of shared understanding and silent promise. Emma immediately stepped forward, taking Noah's small, trembling hand gently in hers. With quiet compassion, she introduced herself, her voice steady and comforting, easing the tension from Noah's shoulders. Noah, cautious at first, slowly began to relax beneath Emma's gentle warmth and sincerity. He was small and pale, his sandy hair tousled, green eyes filled with lingering uncertainty and sadness. Recognizing Emma's intuitive ability, Officer Sullivan quietly asked if Emma might accompany Noah and the rescued dogs to Dr. Harper's veterinary clinic for immediate medical care and comfort. Emma nodded solemnly, feeling the importance of her role deep within her heart. Jack and Grace exchanged proud yet concerned glances, reassuring Emma with gentle smiles as she bravely climbed into the ambulance, Ranger protectively by her side. At the veterinary clinic, Dr. Evelyn Harper, her calm, kind face softly illuminated by the clinic's warm lights, moved swiftly among the animals, gently treating wounds, soothing fears. Emma stayed beside Noah, quietly speaking, sharing gentle stories of Ranger's recovery, reassuring him through her own deep empathy. Noah listened carefully, slowly opening up to her quiet kindness, gradually allowing his own fears to melt gently away. Emma carefully introduced Noah to the tiny Labrador puppy, explaining softly how the fragile little animal needed someone gentle and understanding to help heal the wounds deep within its young heart. Noah's eyes widened softly, a cautious smile appearing as he tenderly reached forward, gently stroking the puppy's soft fur. In that tender moment, something profound shifted within Noah's young soul, a bond instantly forming, gentle yet strong enough to quietly heal the painful scars left by his troubled past. Over the following weeks, Noah frequently visited Emma's home, gently caring for the puppy he named Sunny, symbolic of the bright warmth entering his life. Emma guided Noah gently through each careful step, her empathetic nature allowing her to sense exactly what comfort both Noah and Sunny required. Ranger stayed faithfully beside them, a quiet guardian whose own remarkable recovery inspired everyone around him. As days turned into months, Noah's fragile spirit gradually strengthened. His once guarded green eyes now shone brightly with happiness, his smiles frequent and genuine. Emma's heart swelled softly, witnessing this transformation. Her special gift had quietly woven hope and healing into Noah and Sunny's lives, knitting together wounds previously thought too deep to heal. On a warm, peaceful afternoon, beneath the shade of the Coleman family's oak tree, Emma sat quietly with Ranger, Noah, and Sunny by her side. Soft laughter filled the air, a gentle melody of joy that resonated deeply, symbolizing newfound hope and the miraculous power of empathy. Grace and Jack watched proudly from the porch, hearts filled with quiet gratitude at the extraordinary healing their daughter had inspired. Emma leaned softly against Ranger, whispering gentle thanks into his ear, knowing profoundly that without Ranger's bravery, none of this quiet joy would be possible. Ranger lifted his eyes toward her lovingly, his tail gently brushing against her, silently reassuring her of his unwavering love and devotion. Together, beneath the quiet beauty of the Texas sky, their hearts, once broken and fragmented by sorrow, had now become whole again, strengthened forever by the gentle, powerful force of compassion, courage, and love. Sometimes the deepest wounds can only be healed by compassion and understanding, reminding us that love quietly given has the strength to mend hearts, rebuild trust, and light the way forward through even the darkest moments. If this gentle story touched your heart, perhaps you'll stay with us for more journeys of courage and kindness by subscribing today, joining us in celebrating the quiet, yet powerful bonds that truly define what it means to care.